Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Certificate in Advanced Data Science webinar. We're joined today by Sam Goodgame, one of the adjunct faculty for the Data Science program. Here he is. With that, we'll get started.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar on Georgetown's Advanced Data Science Certificate. So to start off, I think that I'd just like to touch on kind of why we're doing this. You may be aware that Georgetown has a data science certificate that precedes the advanced certificate, the standard version, if you will. And that's an overview of and an introduction to data science and the foundational skills associated with it. But the field is always changing. Anybody who's sort of adjacent to it or is a data scientist knows that. And depending on your personality, that's either a good thing or a bad thing. You're never really done learning. Data science is impossibly broad and impossibly deep. It feels like a lot of the time covering software engineering, different flavors of math, other adjacent fields like information retrieval, and maybe even linguistics and more. And so the Advanced Data Science Certificate is designed to address the needs of folks who are already comfortable with the fundamentals, but want to upskill in a variety of particular areas. And so that's kind of what this, what this overview gets into. So before the standard data science certificate, we would hope that students have a basic grasp of programming and the math skills that are necessary to be a functioning data scientist. It's kind of the left-hand side of the screen here. And once you get into that certificate, we kind of cover all of those fundamentals. We go into sort of the nuts and bolts of software engineering, of data sources and storage, of munging and wrangling data, what we call the data science pipeline, going through all the way through modeling and then finally making the models that we create as data scientists useful to other people. And we regard that as kind of the foundational set of skills. But as practitioners in the field, I think that a lot of folks find themselves looking to upskill in a variety of particular and sometimes idiosyncratic areas that are related to or adjacent to the foundational skills, but require and deserve kind of a little bit more of a deep dive. And so that's the right-hand side of this screen here. And that's really what we're targeting with the Advanced Data Science Certificate. And so this is just kind of that same mapping, but in the context of the certificates that we offer at the Georgetown School of Continuing Studies. So the left-hand side is kind of before the initial data science course, the data science certificate as we have it designed at Georgetown. And then the right two bullets here are the things that we're attempting to do with the Advanced Data Science Certificate. Oftentimes, folks who are just transitioning into data science will do so with the data science certificate. Fun fact: that's how I got into this field. My first career was as an Army infantryman, which is about as different from being a data scientist in a day-to-day sense as you could get. And this is the step that I took to kind of get my feet wet, understand what it is that a data scientist does, and start to gain the skills necessary to be a data scientist. The Advanced Data Science Certificate is for people who are already data scientists or who are closely adjacent to data science work, who are already familiar with the foundational techniques and skills needed to be a data scientist, but want to learn and grow in a leadership capacity, and also with respect to particular skills that are outside of the scope of an introductory course. The curriculum is not linear, which I think is an interesting design that works really well for the goals that we're trying to accomplish with this certificate program. So we break courses into 4 tracks, and those are the colors that you see highlighted in front of you. Data engineering, visual analytics, data science and machine learning, which is sort of the catch-all for the core courses, if you will, and then ethics and leadership, which is a slightly less technical occasionally area, but increasingly important for folks who are building on their own careers as data scientists and growing their careers as professionals. That aspect is something that kind of comes onto folks' radars, and so we hit on that as well. And so sort of in order, what are the things that we would hope that students come out of this experience with? Being able to understand the larger picture, I think, being able to adopt and advocate for principled and ethical approaches to machine learning workflows. So not just focusing on the workflows themselves, but understanding them within the context of teams and organizations, and doing so with an eye in particular towards ethics and leadership, organizing and managing machine learning projects and teams. So again, not just focused on the nuts and bolts of modeling, but being able to do that within the context of an organization that's using these tools to accomplish its goals. And then, of course, kind of cozying up a little bit closer to software engineering, oftentimes within the context of executing data science within organizations. There is a decreasing distinction made between data science teams and software engineering teams, and oftentimes they're extremely cross-functional. So using data science skills and knowledge in the context of larger software teams, so collecting, maintaining, having a system for governing data, conducting testing, and engaging in engineering best practices. And oftentimes this is something that is just it's part and parcel of the courses, and it's a theme that runs through all of them, which we think is a good design. And then, of course, the nuts and bolts of advanced data science work itself. So, for Georgetown, the standard data science certificate goes into the most foundational approaches to tuning, interpreting, and evaluating predictive models. This is an advanced dive into that same foundational work, and then, of course, focusing on the other side of the statistical coin, frequentist statistics and experimentation, designing repeatable and transparent experiments using advanced statistical methods. And of course, this list would not be complete if it did not cover making this work useful to people who are not data scientists, being able to communicate why our work is important, going beyond just the F1 score or the area under the curve, to be able to use our work to influence decisions and influence the trajectory of organizations. And we have a couple of courses that are specifically tailored towards different components of that, and visualization in particular. One of the interesting things I think about this certificate program is its flexibility, which is a little bit non-standard, I think. Students have 2 years to complete the program requirements. And we encourage students to have a minimum level of exposure to each of the 4 tracks that I mentioned earlier. But beyond that, it's kind of an elective model. There are a lot of different courses. We offer them on a recurring basis. So, a particular course on a particular type of visualization might be offered once in the fall and once in the spring, or once in the winter and once in the summer. And that flexibility, we think, is a key asset. And what we're hoping to get out is this notion of completeness and flexibility and adaptability. So you can kind of tailor the curriculum that you're most interested in to your needs, and have that map to the reality of what the courses are that we offer. There's also this notion of seminars, which I think is fascinating. Sometimes it makes sense for us to take the core material that relates to one or sometimes multiple of the actual courses that we teach and deliver it in the course of a 3-hour evening or weekend lecture. And so sometimes this is the faculty ourselves, and sometimes we bring in folks from our own networks or experts from different fields. And we've decided to include this functionality as a part of the curriculum. So there's some examples on the right-hand side here of the types of things that we dive into with seminars, and they're fascinating. It's usually a 3-hour brief dive into the content, and it has a lot of emphasis on the applied nature of the work. So for the financial decisions made by AI, the second bullet there. We had somebody come in who is a financial professional who's also a data scientist, talk through kind of what the considerations are in the abstract, but then apply it to a real world situation, which is extremely compelling. And so this is another component of our curriculum that we emphasize. So I'm going to talk through really briefly what our upcoming courses are. The details of all of these courses are posted on the School of Continuing Studies website. So if you're interested, feel free to check these out. I can talk ad nauseum to the first 4 here because I'm an instructor for those, but I will also hit on the other courses. Creating value from survey data. So I work at a public opinion company, and my colleague Jared Berry and I are currently in the process of designing this survey data course. So kind of runs the gambit from methodological considerations around how to design surveys in the year 2021 and field them, get the data out of the field, and then work with them. And we have a particular bent on using this type of data to build data products because that's what we do. The next three are kind of interesting. It's our leadership sequence. And so that is, I think, the lion's share of courses for the summer, which is executing data science within an organizational context. And the way that we've broken this out is, I think, kind of interesting. We're presenting a framework in which effectively doing data science well is this balancing act of managing dependencies across strategy. Why does the data science function exist? Infrastructure and product management, and how things come into existence within an organization, which is the how bullet here. And then who? What is the team composition that you need? The sort of the motley crew of data scientists, software engineers, data engineers, project managers, scrum masters, product managers. And usually the configuration that you might choose for any given organization is idiosyncratic and specific to that organization. And so what we explore is that framework in the context of a variety of use cases. And we dig into all of kind of the hard questions that bubble up. So it's a little bit less technical in nature, but oftentimes it's the type of question that a lot of folks start to experience as they grow in their career, because data science it's a team sport. It's something that you don't do in a vacuum. Just moving down the line here, introduction to AI and deep learning. Yeah, thanks. So this is something that I believe Rebecca Bilbrow teaches. It's some of the most interesting work in the field in the last 10 years or so is in using neural network architectures and deep learning. So for somebody who's interested or maybe vaguely familiar with that field and wants to learn more, but with a structured curriculum that Georgetown faculty have put time into developing, that's an excellent course. Diagnostics for more informed machine learning, trying to understand more granularly exactly what is going on under the hood. Data warehouses in ETL, as it's the kind of the lion's share of the work that many of us find ourselves doing, understanding, managing, processing, and transforming data. So we felt that certainly deserved a spot here. Image classification and object detection is one of the other really interesting parts of data science that's emerged in the last 10 years or so. And time series analysis and databases. We're kind of lumping those two things together. Most data scientists don't take long before they get exposed to time series methods. You can spend a lot of time going into them, no pun intended, but that's another course. And those are just the things that are on the docket for the near term. So there are some other courses that we have that we've taught previously and that we will teach again that just aren't on the slate for the next couple of months. I'll just run through these really quickly. Natural language understanding and its applications. So natural language processing, making sense of text data programmatically is personally, I think it's one of my favorite parts of data science. And so we have, I think, a couple of courses that teach on that, or excuse me, that touch on that. Managing unstructured data with Elasticsearch. So Elasticsearch is a particular tool that is often used for indexing and finding data. It's sort of cozying up next to engineering methods for information retrieval, which is fascinating. It's another example of a tool that's commonly used that you might find yourself in a professional context being curious about or interested in, but aren't really sure where to start. This is an excellent overview, introduction, and sort of a deep dive into Elasticsearch. Various visualization libraries. So visualization is kind of a part of a lot of things that we do as data scientists, but there are a few libraries that are a little bit more idiosyncratic and powerful and involved. And D3 has kind of long taken the mantle for one of the most powerful and popular libraries for a truly interactive JavaScript visualization. And so we have a course devoted to D3 and then Altair, which is another library. I think I've repeated myself here with the data science, with the time series analysis. Machine learning creativity, I believe this is one that Dr. Bangfort, the faculty director, teaches himself. It's one of the offshoots of the developments in the last 10 years or so. You can leverage machine learning in contexts that maybe aren't always top of mind, generating music, making sense of art. So this is a little bit of it's a more fun and maybe less applicable in a purely professional setting unless you have a really cool job that focuses on that, but fascinating nonetheless. Data warehouses and ETLs, sort of related to the previous course that we had mentioned. Machine translation and neural language models, so kind of building on the first course here, another NLP course in the sequence. And again, I think excuse me, I've repeated myself twice here now, but the diagnostics for more informed machine learning.
All right, and I'll take over from here, Sam. Hi, everyone. My name is Julia. I'll have camera off for this. I'll leave Ben up there. But I am one of the enrollment managers for the School of Continuing Studies. What we're going to talk about a little bit today is a little bit about how the pandemic is affecting the formats in which we're teaching right now. Right now, everything that was formerly in person at our downtown DC location is now in a format that we're calling flex learning as a way to replace or emulate rather the in-person classes we used to have. So anything that is in flex learning, such as this program, will be in live Zoom sessions in Eastern Standard Time, again, to emulate what would have been an in-person class. This is different from an online class, which is asynchronous, self-paced, self-motivated. These will all be as similar to an in-person as possible, and there will be mandatory attendance, just like if it were an in-person class. But same curriculum, same price, there's no ups or downs. It's flexible, so you don't have to, excuse me, you can log in right when the class starts. You don't have to log in super early or stay on super late. The pacing is pretty good. That's still the same small class size. It's not a MOOC. And it's, you'll be able to interact as though you were in the classroom and maintain that kind of networking that a lot of people feel they miss from an online or asynchronous course. And this is kind of the same reiteration. It's the same learning objectives. It's the same number of CEUs or continuing education units that you'll be earning. Same class size, everyone stays engaged, and it's very, very interactive. Other than the seminars that Sam mentioned earlier, most of these classes will not just be lectures where you're taking notes and being silent. Most of our Georgetown classes for the certificate programs are highly interactive. We do Zoom rooms. We have several small breaks because we know there's Zoom fatigue, and of course lunch breaks as well. There are a few program prerequisites that Sam might have mentioned earlier, but I'll just go over them again as a little reminder. This is technically an open enrollment course, so there are no hard prerequisites that you have to prove to us. Like, we don't need transcripts, we don't need proof of a degree, things like that. It's an honor-based system, but to succeed in this program and to pass everything well, these are the things that you would need to have beforehand, such as completed a data science or machine learning program. We do have one that is just data science. That one is application based, and we have a different seminar for that or webinar for that. You can just email me at the end if you want to know more about that as well. You should be familiar with a program like Python or R or SQL we also use as well. And you must own or be able to bring a laptop with you if we go back to in-person that has administrative privileges. That way you can actually do the exercises that we're drilling you in during the program. With that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of funding options. The total tuition for the entire program is $4,968, and most all course materials are included. From my experience taking certificates here, I've taken a few. If there's any required course material, it's either pretty cheap to find on Amazon, usually under $40 used, or I rented many of mine from my local library, such as the PIMBOK, or if there's any other extraneous textbooks, many can be found at libraries. And as a Georgetown student, since you'll have a Georgetown email address and net ID, you'll be able to access the Georgetown e-catalogs at our library. You might not be able to go in person for now, but the e-catalog is free to use while you have your ID. We do accept a few different kinds of funding. We can take employer funding or even SF-182s if you are a federal government employee. There's an alumni discount, an OPM discount for Office of Personnel Management if you're a federal government employee. And if you sign up for all the classes at once, you'll qualify for the interest-free payment plan, which is 4 equal payments of 25% of the total in your shopping cart. And that'll be explained as well on the website, and links will be provided when I send this out to everybody. Registration is fairly easy. Again, it's open enrollment, so no applications required. It is very similar to online retail. You visit this website, and again, links will be provided when I send out the slide deck. You'll follow the instructions, you make a profile, add courses to a shopping cart, and check out. And that is it. You're officially enrolled after payment is received. And we're going to open the floor to questions. I know there's a couple of you in here right now, and I know I already see one person. Let's see, give me one moment. There's a questions box where you can type things in, and I will pose them live on camera. So feel free to do or ask whatever you'd like while Sam and I are here. And also we have this email address and phone number. You can reach us anytime, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. But for questions right now, Sam, someone has already asked, what is the weekly rigor like? So the average amount of classwork you'll be doing outside of the class time itself.
It's a great question. It's a little bit dependent on the individual courses, but the majority of the work for this certificate takes place during the class hours. I'll speak to the courses that I'm teaching, the 4 that I'm teaching this summer. I'm going to send out primers ahead of time just to get everybody on the same page, thinking about the topics that we're going to discuss. Certainly if there are any hard prerequisites, then I'll sort of make those clear. But the model for most of these courses is not to have extensive out of class homework assignments or like massive projects. The design of most classes is either 6 hours, 0.6 CEUs over the course of one Saturday, 12 over the course of 2 Saturdays, or sometimes 18, which is often broken up into Friday evening, Saturday, Friday evening, Saturday. And so in the in-between period, sometimes it may make sense for instructors to say, hey, we ended the class talking about this one topic. If you are not yet comfortable up to a certain threshold, then it would make sense to get there before the next class. But that's more of the model than saying, there's a very structured set of homework or set of requirements. Does that answer the question?
Absolutely. Let's see, another one come in, and I think this is one for me, about the grading structure. So there's no letter grades. Instead, it is pass-fail, but it's something very specific with pass-fail for all of our certificate programs. So instead of earning a 75% overall, and that's a passing grade, instead, you must earn a 75% or higher on every single assignment. So you can't get 100% on most things and skip the final project. You must do every assignment, and you must pass every assignment in order to pass the whole class. You'll be rewarded a grade of SC, which stands for successfully completed. The outline of what that means is in our handbook if you need to show that to an employer. I know many people need to show a definition so that they can get reimbursed. So if you ever need that, let me know. I can send you a transcript and the definition. Excellent question. Someone asks, they asked how I said most course materials are included. Is there anything that isn't included to look out for? Sam, would you be able to answer that?
Again, it's a little bit specific to each course. We as faculty approach this with the understanding that, well, first of all, the majority of the software that we work with is open source. In fact, I think probably all of it. The resources that are useful or helpful or necessary for working with that software, we usually will present. Sometimes we'll point to other good resources. Multiple members of our faculty, for example, have authored O'Reilly books. If you're familiar with them, it's the colorful ones with the animals on the cover. And I believe that you have access to those through Georgetown. Could you correct me on that?
I believe you are correct. Again, with the Georgetown email address, you'll have access to many things with that net ID, and most things are you log in as a Georgetown student.
And so that's a really helpful resource. I mean, we're cognizant of the tension that a student faces, in coming up with the correct resources to learn what we're instructing, and we direct that towards what we believe are the best resources, and they're very rarely going to be things like a $170 textbook that you have to buy. Like we go towards doing this as efficiently and cost effectively as possible.
Agreed. I think I've seen, one textbook out of the few certificates I've taken that was over $20 and it was, on Amazon brand new. So no worries for that as well. Another question, looks like this one's for me. Do you accept international students into this program? Absolutely. Now that everything is virtual, no visas are required. If you are, overseas, just be wary that it is a live Zoom program. So any time differences, you will need to accommodate for that yourself. So we do accept international students, and even if we go back to in person, we still do. Just be wary that because this is a non-credit program, we cannot sponsor a visa. So that's one thing we have to put in our little small text everywhere. But absolutely, we accept international students, and no TOEFL exams required for these. Again, an honor-based system. So as long as you can read, write, and speak English at a graduate level, then you are accepted. A little slow on questions. Are there any FAQs, Sam, that you can think of that many people ask you outside of normal like advising hours, or any projects that students struggle on you want to talk about for a second? What would be a successful student in the program?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If you ask the question, why would somebody do this, and what is the value add of a program like this? It's mostly in the knowledge. It's in the knowledge and the experience that you gain from learning a new skill with enough structure to know that you're going about it in the correct way. You're not going down the wrong rabbit holes. And to emerge with the knowledge of something that maybe you didn't even know that you didn't know about before. Not only do you now know about it, you are familiar enough with it to confidently wield it in a personal setting, in a professional setting. Um, and so if you take that mentality, then you'll get a lot out of the course. It's non-traditional, I guess, in certain ways. As pedagogically as a certificate program, like what is a certificate? I think that the stance that many of the faculty take is that the reason why you would join this program is to learn the things that we cover and to be able to wield them in your life. And so most students, I think, approach it from that angle, and that's part of the reason why we don't really harp on being extremely specific with grading, for example, or being extremely specific with like highly structured deliverables. We're mostly focused on getting you familiar enough and capable enough with the topics that are covered in each of these individual skills, and then weaving them together. So I think that we're a little bit more relaxed in certain areas because that's how we believe that it's most efficient and effective to learn this stuff.
Excellent. I think that applies to all of our programs, even beyond this one, but especially this one. So very good. No more questions are coming in, but any parting words, and we'll send out this recording as well as all the links to click, the schedule, everything in the next week or so.
The one other thing that I would add is, it's a consideration, right? That we're not doing this in person. Georgetown has this beautiful glass and steel structure in
Mhm.
just north of Chinatown in Washington D.C. And certainly we enjoy teaching our certificate programs there. But I will say that we've been doing this remotely for a while, and most people are familiar with the joys and pains of working from home as well. We're pretty good at teaching this and delivering it remotely at this point. And data science, I think, is a field that is well suited for this type of work, just because the components that are asynchronous are pretty easy to collaborate on via the computer that you're using, to video conference. The components that need to be synchronous, we've got the resources to execute well. So we've been doing the advanced data science certificate remotely for a while now, and we've also been doing the standard data science certificate remotely. And on the spectrum of topics that you could teach effectively in this format, I think data science is pretty close to the top. So I think it's certainly nice to be in the same room with everybody, and eventually I think we'll get to that point. But I wouldn't hesitate to take the course because it's remote. I think that it's extremely effective this way.
Excellent. I agree. All right, everyone, if you have any other questions, just feel free to email us at pdcprograms@georgetown.edu. We're here again Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We'll be sending out this recording to anyone who registered, regardless of whether or not they were able to attend today. And again, have a happy, healthy safe rest of your semester, and we look forward to seeing you in the class.
Take care.
Mhm.